Last Train Home was released this past month in December 2023. And now that I'm about 40 hours into the game, it's time for a review of what's turning out to be a pretty interesting game. Last Train Home is a single-player, campaign-based game. There's no multiplayer, and combines a couple of different types of games together that have been very popular in their own right, but does so in its own unique way that makes it review-worthy. I'm going to talk about a number of specifics, but the overall premise of the game is that you're a Czechoslovakian soldier during the Russian Civil War, sort of World War I era, and you have to get back home by crossing the entire country of Russia by train. You start with a handful of fellow comrades on a poorly equipped train with dangers along the entire route, and have to upgrade and improve the train so you'll make it. Feed and take care of your troops, and fight enemies while on your journey. The best way to describe the way this game presents itself is that it comes in two fundamental parts. One is the train gameplay that involves moving it across the map, gathering resources, upgrading the train, taking care of your troops as they improve in their skills, and engaging in dialogues that open or close additional missions, or initiate events you'll need to deal with. The other part of the game is the troop combat. That is third-person, strategy-based fighting where you'll control the movement and action of a squad of troops that you handpick and assemble, largely based on what you think they'll encounter. Now, you'll undoubtedly spend a large portion of the game in this combat mode, so it's worth giving it a little breakdown. You assemble your squads from 5 different skill classes: scouts, medics, grenadiers, machine gunners, or riflemen. Each person also has their own set of rather random traits that gives them buffs, debuffs, or special abilities. You'll also get to apply points to various characteristics like fitness, dexterity, intelligence, charisma, that sort of thing. And those characteristics directly influence how good the soldier is at their role. So you get to tune, tweak, and improve them in a variety of ways to suit your playstyle. The fights themselves are hard, even on the default difficulty setting. Rushing your troops around to kill enemies is a great way to get your whole squad wiped out quickly, like rushing across a bridge to find a nest of machine guns waiting on the other side. So you need to plan, do some advanced scouting, engage the enemy when cover is at your strategic advantage, and generally use your smarts to succeed. This part of the game is really enjoyable and is open enough to allow a player to choose how they want to approach and win a given situation. There's plenty of room for players to choose a stealth and backstab approach, or set up an ambush to engage in an all-out gunfight. Most combat missions might be best won by applying a combination of techniques, so you're going to have to figure out exactly what seems best given what the game might throw at you. And so far, the game keeps giving me new things as surprises. For instance, the enemy started to walk around with military-trained dogs, and to my surprise, these dogs were much better at detecting my troops that were nearby, over the human troops, as if they could smell us hiding in the bushes. They also started sending spotter planes that had us get off the main road and dive for cover in the roadside hedges. These new encounters were revealed slowly in the game, ratcheting up the difficulty and keeping things fresh. The AI fought well, used cover, moved and repositioned themselves to get better angles, rushed for bayonet attacks, threw grenades, and generally did all the things I could do as a player to try to gain an advantage in combat. These combat missions aren't just pure fighting though. There's side quests revealed during the mission, some of them being non-combat, and they give opportunities to your troops to gain more experience. There's also important looting that happens in these combat encounters. Even though there is important resource gathering in the train management part of the game, there's a lot of critical resource gathering during the combat missions. In fact, thoroughly scouting a combat map to get every bit of cloth, metal, ammunition, food, fuel, and other supplies can definitely make the difference between success and failure in the game. Failure seems to be when you lose your troops, either from combat or environmental causes, and get down to your last 6 soldiers. Environmental causes are more evident on the train. Between these combat missions, you'll keep your train moving down the tracks from one point of interest to another. At these points, you send out a small squad to explore abandoned towns, gather wood and hunt in the woods, go fishing for food and gathering herbs at lakes, and engage in trade with towns. During these explorations, you need to slow or stop the train until your troops return from these excursions. While the train is stopped, it's also a good time to perform upgrades to your train cars and improve living conditions, increase storage capacity, armor the cars against attacks, and just different things to improve parts of the train. You can't stop the train forever though, and time management is important in the game. This is where the game is FTL-like, in that during these slowed or stopped times, the enemy becomes increasingly aware of your whereabouts, and also increases the likelihood of them attacking your train with bombs, damaging your train and injuring your soldiers. And you need a working train and healthy soldiers to succeed in the game. You'll also be competing with the cold of Siberia, and needing to keep your troops both warm on the train and during these explorations off-train, both of which use ever-increasing resources. The game has a mixture of cinematic art that's sometimes watercolor, sometimes pencil sketching, and sometimes either live actors or really well done motion capture. There were scenes where it was hard to tell. The game's graphics are pretty standard with decent detail, and nothing really jumped out at me. So I take that as a good thing, that there's nothing distracting or hard to read. Reading dialogue is something you'll need to do in the game if you have the immersive gameplay option checked, as all the dialogue is Czech or Russian, and personally, I can't understand a thing. I do think hearing everything in a foreign language is immersive and cool, but it has caused me some problems. I like hearing it, but in the game during combat, someone yells out something, and I can't understand. So I don't know if it's one of my men shouting out that they are following an order I gave them, or that they're in trouble or spotted something, or even if it's the enemy hollering out that they've spotted us. That part keeps tripping me up, but it's not game-breaking, and there is an option to change the foreign language. Overall, there's a lot to manage and engage in strategically in this game, which leads to perhaps the other small negative. The game does a good job of guiding you through the beginnings of the game and teaching you as a kind of tutorial introduction to things, but there are so many layers and different kinds of things to manage. At times it's hard to know what something does or how I can affect something, and the game help system only provides you the very basics of the gameplay and often comes up a little bit short, really conveying all the things you can do or how to do them. So there's a fair bit of trial and error just to see what something does. It's not terrible, and you do figure things out, but it's a game with a fair bit of depth, so a little more in the help guides would be nice. It also seems to be a pretty long game. As I said in the beginning, I'm about 40 hours in on the game, and from looking at the map, I've just scratched the surface of the journey. At a regular price of $40 on Steam, it's good that it's a long game. I feel for campaign-based games, you need that long playthrough, because it's not something you're going to go back and play over and over again. And this one has that nice draw where you think you'll just explore a couple more towns before stopping. Then, several hours later, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, which means unconsciously it must be a good game, because I'm into it, enjoying it, and have lost track of time. For a campaign game, it has a fair bit of letting you choose your own style, and I found myself getting rather attached to certain soldiers in my squads that exhibited traits and abilities I really liked. So, do I recommend it? I don't think it's a particularly groundbreaking game in any way, but it is enjoyable, and you'll probably feel you got your money's worth by the end. I hope you enjoyed the game review of Last Train Home, and feel free to check out the rest of the channel. See you next time.